If you had asked me at the start of this year to sit down and tell you this story, I don't think I would have been ready. But something shifted very recently. I went for a residential retreat at the Divine Retreat Center in Ramsgate. I've been to many retreats before. My first solo one was in 2008. Back then, I went expecting something very dramatic, a miracle to be honest. My brother had just come back from a retreat and had powerfully experienced God. So I thought maybe if I had a moment like that, everything in my life would change overnight. But long story short, it didn't. But this recent retreat was different. Now, there was no out of the world experience. There was awareness, there was grace, and there were a bucket full of tears. Yes, I was crying my heart out. And somehow all of that led to something. For the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace. Not emotional, not excited, just steady, anchored. And when I look back at my life, I realize there's been one quiet thread running through it all: rejection. As a child, I was the eldest. When my brothers were born, something shifted in my family dynamic. It wasn't intentional, no one sat me down and dethroned me. But responsibility came early. I grew up quickly. Somewhere inside, something changed. Then I was sent to boarding school. No long explanation, no emotional processing. Just, it's good for you and you're going. You adapt, you survive, but something forms inside of you. Then came my first romantic rejection. I had just come out of boarding school and was back home. I made a friend and liked her, but she said no. Now on the surface, it sounds very small, right? College romance. But when rejection is already a pattern in your life, it doesn't feel small, it feels humongous. However, life moved on and I began pursuing my higher studies. And it's during this time that I met someone new. And then came a decision that, looking back, shaped the next decade of my life. I remember very clearly asking God about it. I prayed before the relationship. I asked Him to guide me and, what do I do? Now the answer I got was a clear no. But I didn't want that answer, because my emotions were louder than obedience. Finally, here was acceptance. Someone accepted me for who I am. So I chose differently. Now that relationship lasted a few years, but when it ended, it didn't just hurt me, it broke something inside of me. As a result, I went into depression I didn't know how to name. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't even know who to trust with it. And if you're wondering what depression looked like for me, I was numb all the time. When I was alone, I would just cry for no reason at all. I was lowest emotionally at that point in time. Honestly, if you ask me, I didn't even understand what was happening to me. At that time, I believed something very dangerous. I believe God had punished me because I disobeyed Him. Years later, I see this very differently. God wasn't punishing me, He was simply protecting me. And when I stepped outside of that protection, I experienced the consequences of my own choices. That understanding has taken time and maturity. It didn't come overnight. Now you'd ask me, when did it start? I'd say about 20 years ago. I began going to church consistently. I attended Mass every day. And on the 21st day, something shifted. The depression lifted. Not completely, but enough for me to know that something had changed. Now, I knew something had changed deep inside, so life continued. And I did what many of us would do. I tried to become valuable. I threw myself into work, into filmmaking, into entrepreneurship, into building something that would prove I mattered. If I could just achieve enough, build enough, succeed enough, maybe that unseen rejection deep inside would finally lose its grip. But here's the truth I've had to admit. I was building from a wound. And when work didn't fill it, I tried something else. I even considered the priesthood. Not from calling, but from escape. Because sometimes we don't just run into a career, we run into activity. Even spiritual activity. In 2015, I joined a Catholic ministry. And I can confidently say that life changed for the better. Because it was during this time that I started to know more about God and the relationship we are called to share with Him. I went for retreats. I had healing sessions. I used to read the Bible every day. I met with spiritual directors. I went for confession. I prayed. I studied. I did it all. and I gained clarity. But looking back, most of it was intellectual clarity. And this is the sentence that now sums up my life. Knowing about God is not the same as knowing Him. I knew about God, but I didn't yet know Him. Now, there's a difference between understanding theology and entering into a relationship with God. And there's a difference between believing the truths and allowing those truths to hold you. For years, I would surrender things to God and then take them back. I would say, Lord, I trust you, and then try to control the outcome myself. It was surrender, control, surrender, control. That was my pattern. You know, the priest at this recent retreat said something that struck me very deeply. He said we live our life in patterns. We'd go for a retreat, we have a good experience, and then we think that's it. You know, we go back to life, and a few weeks later, we find ourselves in the same place again. Now, looking back, that's exactly what happened in my life. And because we try to do everything ourselves, you know, we want healing on our timeline, we want God to answer our prayers, we want to do things our way most of the time. But God's ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are not our thoughts. I knew something was shifting. I realized I don't need to manage my life. I don't need to fix myself. I don't need to prove myself. Because even in my disobedience, even in my confusion, even when I was running from Him, He was there. That's the part that overwhelms me now. He never left. And I need to name who changed everything. His name is Jesus. Not an idea, not a self-improvement course, not a performance program, but a relationship, a living relationship with Jesus. While I was in prayer, I asked God to give me His word. And when I opened the Bible, this is what I read. I have loved you with an everlasting love. Jeremiah 31:3. It didn't feel abstract. It felt like it was spoken to that young boy, the one who felt displaced, the one who was sent away to boarding school, the one who thought rejection meant he wasn't enough. Now, if I could go back and speak to him today, I wouldn't tell him to be stronger. I wouldn't tell him to achieve more. I wouldn't tell him to harden his heart. I would just tell him, you are already loved. And another verse that has shaped me for years, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. For most of my life, I have tried to eliminate weakness because I thought that was a strength. But now I understand. Grace meets me in my weakness, and that's why I am peaceful. Life is still imperfect. My decisions still matter, and mistakes still happen. But I'm no longer carrying my life alone. And this isn't the end of my journey. If anything, it feels like a beginning of a new one. Not a journey of striving, not a journey of proving, but a journey of resting in the knowledge that I am loved. I'm at peace with my story, at peace with who I am, and deeply aware that I am loved by God. So if you're watching this and you're hurting, if you're constantly trying to fix yourself, trying to outrun rejection, trying to prove you're enough, maybe just stop. Don't run, don't prove, don't fix. My humble suggestion to you would be start a relationship with Jesus, because knowing about God is not the same as knowing Him. And when you know Him, you begin to understand love. And when you understand love, rejection loses its power. And that is freedom. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, cheers and God bless.